Hey guys, I'm your host Matt, and I was down for a week or so, but I'm back, so hopefully I can make some new content for you guys and keep this thing going. So, what do you know? The Dolphins, after starting 2 and 6, are in the playoff race, and if they win on Sunday versus the Jets and the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Denver Broncos, the Dolphins actually secure the number 7 seed and advance to the playoffs. Of course, that means they'll have to go on the road to play the Buffalo Bills, but it would also mean that the Dolphins made the playoffs 3 years in a row under coach Mike McDaniel. So that's a positive thing. Will that be enough to save Chris Greer's job and save Mike McDaniel's job? Very likely. I don't think Stephen Ross is going to make any sweeping changes this season anyway. So the Dolphins are probably going to roll back Tua, McDaniel, and Greer for at least the 2025 season. Beyond that, who knows? So this will be a big game for the Dolphins in terms of Mike McDaniel's resume, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's going to mean any changes as far as the front office and the coaching staff. At least not the head coach anyway. So the Dolphins now are one win away and help from the Denver Broncos. They need to lose in order for the Dolphins to make the playoffs. And, no one thought that this was going to happen. After watching the Dolphins fail to the Houston Texans, I thought that was pretty much it for the Dolphins. I didn't think they'd be able to even get into the playoffs with a 9-8 record, but here we are. The Dolphins can do it. If they take care of business and Kansas City Chiefs, well, their backups win the game, then the Dolphins have a chance. Now, as far as what it means for the Dolphins long term, well, Tyler Huntley is kind of auditioning for a job. There were already reports from Barry Jackson saying that the Dolphins wanted to bring Tyler Huntley back as a backup quarterback. Maybe second string, maybe third string. It's hard to really say, but the interest is there from the team. And the Dolphins really can use a better backup quarterback than they had coming into the situation this season. They had Skylar Thompson, and he didn't prove to be very good in that spot. Neither did the other backups, Tim Boyle and so on and so forth. So the Dolphins really need to get a quality number 2 backup quarterback. That might be Tyler Huntley. It might not be, but at least as far as we know right now, the Dolphins are interested. So it's a big game for Tyler Huntley. It's a big game for the Miami Dolphins. If the Dolphins win this game, at least it keeps the hope alive from them to play Buffalo in the first round of the wild card playoffs. And Tyler Huntley can solidify himself perhaps as the number 2 quarterback for Miami going into the future. He already won one game that he started, and then he won a second game last week. So Tyler Huntley has won 2 games as a backup quarterback. And in a regular season where your starter can miss some games because of injury, then you need to have a backup quarterback who can come in and win games. And that's something he's proven he can do for the Dolphins this season. So that's that side of it. But the other side of it is the fact that the Dolphins have to now beat the Jets in order to have a chance to remain in the playoff hunt with a backup quarterback. It turns out something similar happened just 2 years ago. Skylar Thompson was the backup quarterback for Tua Tagovailoa, and he needed to win a game versus the Jets in order to get to the playoffs to face the Buffalo Bills on the road. So it's almost like deja vu. You have a backup quarterback for Miami. You're playing against the Jets with the hopes that if you win that game, you make it to the playoffs. Now, obviously, the difference between 2022 and 2024 is that the Dolphins needed help in 2024 in order to make it to playoffs. In 2022, the Dolphins were pretty much in a win and in situation. So this is a little bit different for Tyler Huntley, is that the game is not really in his control. Yes, it's in control whether he wins or loses this game. Of course, he and his teammates, but it's not in the Dolphins' control whether they go to the playoffs because they need Denver to lose. Now, in terms of Mike McDaniel, this is an important game for him because it'll prove once and for all that he can win a big game in December. And the Jets aren't a very good team this season. They've had a disappointing season, obviously. But these narratives about the Dolphins have been floating around all season. It's very difficult for them to beat good teams on the road. They beat a bad team in Cleveland last week. The Jets aren't having a good season this season, so we'll see if the Dolphins can beat them. But If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, the Jets came into Miami and lost the game in overtime in the game that they probably should have won in regulation. So it's not like the Jets are going to walk quietly into the night. The Dolphins have to go out there and try to win the game. Devontae Adams had 100 yards in the last game against the Dolphins. So did Garrett Wilson. And Aaron Rodgers had his first 300-yard passing game in I don't know how many years. So the Jets are quite capable of sustaining an offensive attack against the Dolphins. They proved it the last meeting that they had, even though they lost the game. But now, they probably are playing for a little bit more incentive, right? Last week they played against the Buffalo Bills. They got beat down a little bit, probably left a bad taste in their mouth. So they probably want to end the season on a positive note. And, Aaron Rodgers has 499 touchdowns. He'd like to get 500 touchdowns before the season is over. So this is something that they probably want to play for, and playing for their quarterback, playing for their coach. It might be something that interests the Dolphins. I'm sorry, interests the Jets. I'm not really sure. But the Dolphins on paper are supposed to be a better team this season than the Jets. But, games aren't won and lost on paper, right? You have to go out in the field and you have to prove it. The Dolphins have dropped games against teams that they probably should have won, like the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. So the Dolphins cannot take this game for granted, especially going on the road and playing in New York against the Jets. So that's the other side of it, right? You have to be able to get up for a game, which is basically a playoff game for the Dolphins, even though it doesn't guarantee them a spot in the playoffs. The other thing is the offensive line. The offensive line is ravaged with injuries. We're down to the third string right tackle as Austin Jackson's out for the season. Kendall Lamb is out for the season. And, Teron Armstead may miss this game. Patrick Paul should step in. But now we down to your second string left tackle, your third string right tackle. And, it's just going to be a very difficult time for Tyler Huntley to have the kind of success he had last week against the Cleveland Browns. Fortunately for the Dolphins, the Cleveland Browns offense couldn't do anything. So the Dolphins had their way with them on defense. And, it gave the Dolphins opportunities on offense to continue to try to score. The Jets offense is not nearly as anemic as the Cleveland Browns offense was. So, the defense really has to put forth a better effort. And it starts with the offensive line. If the offensive line can play well, protect Tyler Huntley, they can put some points on the board early on. Maybe they can give the defense the cushion that they need in order to make some plays on defense. But it won't be easy. The Dolphins are missing some people on defense as well. I think that both safeties are banged up. Javon Holland, I think he has a wrist injury. I think Jordan Poyer has a knee and a finger injury. So, the safeties are a little bit banged up. The cornerbacks, Kendall Fuller, he likely missed this game. Jalen Ramsey, he didn't have a great game against the Jets the last time. Apparently, he struggled to cover Garrett Wilson all day long. Hopefully, as I mentioned on Twitter during the game 2 weeks ago against the Jets, hopefully they put Jalen Ramsey on Devontae Adams, which seems to be a better matchup for Jalen Ramsey. So, we'll see what the Dolphins do. If, in fact, they go to man defense or they play more zones, I'm not sure. But they can't continue to do what they did a couple of weeks ago against the Jets and expect to have success because, both receivers went over 100 yards and the quarterback threw for over 300. So that's all you need to know about the Dolphins' defensive plan against the Jets the last time they played. So this is going to be an important game for the team. I hope they pull it out. I hope the Broncos lose, and I hope the Dolphins have a chance to save their season and make it into the wild card round of the playoffs. I'm not sure if the Dolphins are necessarily the seventh best team in the AFC this year, but then again, a lot of teams in the AFC have fallen short of what most people expected them to be this season. So I guess for the Dolphins, if they make it in there, they deserve it. If not, then the Denver Broncos deserve it. So either which way, how it turns out. And even the Bengals, I think the Bengals even have a chance to get in, right? If the Bengals win and the Broncos lose and the Dolphins lose, I think the Bengals get a spot. So, the playoffs are still available for 3 teams in the AFC. I'm not sure if any team is truly deserving, but, someone has to go. So why not the Dolphins, right? That's how I look at it. So that's it for this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment to this video and share it with your friends. And I'll see you in the next one.